All right, thanks for that info, Travis. Yeah, my name's Lee France. I've been a cartographer for going on 15 years now, I think, and the entirety of that time has been spent building maps and designing maps in an outdoor recreation context. Maybe someday I'll make a map other than a trail map, but it hasn't happened quite yet. I started my career helping build the amazing Trails Illustrated map line with the Nat Geo team in Colorado. And over the last 8 or 9 years, my career has transitioned more into the digital space. I now lead the cartography team at onX Maps, and I'm really excited to show off some of the work that we've been doing for the last couple of years to develop our own personal brand of cartography for our maps and what that process has looked like for us. First, I just want to give a little bit of background. So onX Maps is a company founded in 2009 with this sole purpose of trying to solve a really crucial challenge for hunters, which is understanding whose land you might be standing on at any given moment. And this is crucial because you can't really just hunt anywhere, and knowing that information while you're in the field in the palm of your hand could really make that difference in a successful hunt. So their first product was this land ownership map layer that could be loaded onto a little memory chip for handheld GPS devices, and then that was packaged and sold in stores until sometime in 2013, they launched their very first mobile mapping app. And they found huge success in this outdoor recreation space, filling this really niche need for hunters, and that land ownership data is still the main, value proposition today. But they also saw some huge opportunity. They started learning that they could apply that same recipe to some other markets. So in 2019, we launched the off-road app, which is focused on the motorized trail user, or overlander. If you've ever been car camping up a rough road, you might just be an overlander. Then in 2021, they launched the backcountry app, focused on the everyday trail or backcountry explorer that's out backcountry skiing, backpacking, climbing, hiking. And then, as recently as last year, we launched the fourth app, the Fish product, which has been initially focused on flat water fishing or fishing on lakes. But tying them all together, onX has always been in this business of developing really accurate and trustworthy spatial data for these different outdoor recreation purposes. It's also a map-centric company, as in that primary product is the map. But up until late 2022, there wasn't a focused cartographer, much less a team at onX. Cartographic work was being done, but the role of cartographer didn't exist yet. So just about anyone could be getting in and modifying a style sheet, and there wasn't really a cohesive voice there. Requests would come from the different products, and solutions were made only for that product in mind. So without this focus on the delivery and display of all this valuable spatial content to be purpose-driven and beautiful and fun to use, it was essentially falling a little bit short. Like, that value wasn't being fully realized by the customers. And leadership at onX had also seen the success of bringing a technical cartographic focus to the map from other companies. They'd seen just how much more fun and enjoyable it was to use a map built with a cartographic mindset. And just like engineering or product design, there's this whole world of rules and best practices around cartography and map design. So if the main product is going to be a map, there needed to be that equal focus of best practices given to engineering and product design, also given to cartography. So in late 2022, a cartography team was formed. We now have 4 app-specific cartographers, as we call them, one for each of the onX products, and they're essentially subject matter experts in that field, and they bring that expertise to their cartography work. We also have a really talented senior technical cartographer focused on our cross-product initiatives and our really complex back-end design system and organization. And then finally, we have a senior software engineer, which has proved really crucial to our fast acceleration, kind of helping bridge that gap between our more complex cartographic needs and the engineering-heavy pieces of delivering map design to mobile and web clients. Now, I struggled a little bit to find the best way to frame the topic of this talk because there was just so much to go over. This new team's objective was to define this cartographic brand and make a map that was recognizable to the onX brand, but also really intuitive, designed for the specific use cases of the people using that map to accomplish their goals in the outdoors. I mean, that was kind of our objective, but ultimately it kind of turned into this story about giving cartography a voice in the tech space. And we'll see the success of giving a digital map product the cartographic attention that it needs. And I'll dive into this new cartography team's journey of and process for how we define that new look for the map and how we kind of catered it to then our specific use cases while anchoring it around a common brand or design, and then what sort of specific elements really help tie it together. And I'll also be sure that you get to see lots of pretty before and after, since I'm sure that's what most folks are hoping to see out of this. Okay, so we had this objective to create this branded look to the maps. The first phase of that for us was to create this common starting point to anchor around. That way we could preserve common themes and then branch off of those to build our different variants catered to our different use cases. This felt like the most greenfield part of the process. It was the area where we could really get the most creative. But at the time, we didn't really have any great design tools available. Cartographic work involved editing a style sheet and then refreshing a web browser to see those design changes. And anyone who's done this kind of work knows that it can be effective, but it's also really challenging for a more fluid phase of the design process. So we first focus on bringing in some cartographic design tools to streamline this initial design phase. And since we're building custom vector tiles and we have our own custom style sheet, we wanted to use an editor that could be pointed to both of those. And the Maputnik editor, which is open source, was perfect for that. So that user interface was really crucial for us to fluidly move through this anchor map design, refining things like the line widths, the colors, those zoom-based transitions, and just like kind of honing in on that initial visual hierarchy that we wanted. And we kind of relied on a lot of standard cartographic practices for displaying specific map content like road networks, contours, and land cover, because we wanted to lean into the type of maps that a lot of people use today for navigation so that our map would instantly feel intuitive and easy to use. And then we also leaned into some existing onX standards, such as font choices, to try to anchor it around the onX brand. And this was really an opportunity to define ourselves, how these fonts were used on the map, what point of interest symbols look like. And this is where the symbol fonts proved really crucial. Tony Canistra and Kate LaRue presented on this innovation during Practical Cartography Day. The symbol fonts are amazing because while they do have a few design limitations, they scale with that pixel perfect clarity, and they allow us to maintain single versions of our icons. So the style sheet then gets to determine variants for size and color properties, and then we could use different variants and colors across this entire product suite without needing a new sprite image for every possible combination that might exist. So this blank slate design was the first step, and it created this anchor from which we could apply changes to color, content focus, visual hierarchy to define these different map variants. So now that we had this foundational base map to work with, we started looking at the individual onX products to branch off of that main anchor. And this is where we really needed to step into the shoes of our map users to make sure that we were approaching this challenge from an angle that would really resonate with them. So before making any changes, we wanted to jump into this exercise of defining the cartographic focus for each app. So we brought in some subject matter experts within onX, as well as the expertise of our cartographic team to define what our core value propositions were for each app. And then using that knowledge, we identified what it is that the customer is trying to do in each product, what's bringing them to onX, and then what does onX as a company really excel at within each of those different columns. And then how could we leverage those primary value propositions in our cartographic focus to help solve those initial customer objectives. And then there was also this less tangible piece to this, which was to define the vibes, for lack of a better word, for each product. Which were very different for like hunters or off-roaders and then hikers or climbers. So to determine these vibes, we started to look at the target demographics for each product, what marketing material looked like from onX, to get a sense of how the map should really feel. Hunt felt like a more professional and serious activity. The activity of hunting isn't really a light matter, and it deserves to be treated in a more straightforward and serious way. Off-road felt more big and bold. There was less subtlety, there was more obviousness coming from our marketing. There's fun there, but it's also very utility driven. It's meant to work on the fly, moving really fast. And then backcountry just had like a bit of a lighter vibe. It was meant to cater more to the everyday trail user, folks just wanting to get out, have a good time in the outdoors. And I didn't make a slide for fish because it's still being defined. It's so new that the experience of designing a map for it is new and happening kind of in tandem with the product discovering itself and where it fits in. So from this, we could outline a rough color palette and visual hierarchy around those vibes and this main value propositions that we identified earlier that are driving people to use these different onX products. And we did this exercise for each of the individual onX apps to build this little roadmap for ourselves on how to branch off of that main anchor in very intentional ways. So finally, we get to the good stuff, actually putting all this research and analysis into action and crafting the designs of our different map variants. So this step of the process simply depended on using these predefined roadmaps as our rough guide, and then allowing our cartographers to get creative, bring in their expertise, and like craft these map designs for their respective onX products. And we didn't tackle all of them at once. We wanted to progress through them in order of product maturity, starting with the apps that maybe had fewer users, maybe a little more of an appetite for risk, as a place where we could learn. So we started with backcountry being the youngest of our established products. Here's a view of the old map. So starting at this high-level, low-zoom view, the previous design was really kind of overpowered by these large regional badges obscuring the map, and it was just very difficult to orient yourself. So we wanted to make sure the map had more focus. That it was clean, like less overwhelming, make the right landmarks for the purpose of this map really stand out. So here's a view of the new map. This allowed for the map to just become easier to read, and it emphasized areas that we had some really rich content that we wanted people to start interacting with. Another look at the old map. This is at the higher zoom level. It just really, everything felt out of balance. Contour lines were really strong, so it became just difficult to use for on or off trail navigation. And then with the new design, we leaned into some of those core user objectives that we identified in that earlier exercise, putting an emphasis on the natural world, making the terrain easy to interpret while still creating a focus for that trail user. And the design also started to surface some of the onX curated content, like our trails that have a lot of great information about hikes and cool photos along the way. This new design really just started to provide the right canvas to bring all of this content to life, making it easier to find and ultimately interact with, while also just being really beautiful and fun to use. This approach of staggering our redesigns allowed us to just learn as we went and then bring the things that we learned to the more mature products. So next in line came off-road. The previous off-road map had leaned a lot on color, and it resulted in this low zoom view that was just very overwhelming. There's so much content that's competing with each other for dominance in that visual hierarchy battle. So similar to what we learned with backcountry, we wanted this low zoom map to be an opportunity to help a user focus on the areas that we had some really good rich content and make sure that we were striking that right balance of a beautiful visualization that emphasized that right content and maintain those core experience pieces that users currently loved about the map. And also, it's like worth noting throughout this process, we did a lot of regular check-ins with our product leaders and stakeholders just to get an internal sense that we were on the right track with these new map designs. And for off-road, we leaned into some brand colors in subtle ways and learned that it was a really great way to tie the map to the brand and just make the whole experience feel a lot more cohesive. So once these maps were closer to that 90% completion phase, we started to leverage feedback from some of our ambassadors and our content contributors. And we used those signals that we got from them to make some final refinements that led to our finished off-road map. Then finally came Hunt, our most mature product, and we wanted to make sure we got this one right. So we worked really closely with our internal experts to hone in on the true essentials for a hunter. And with their help, we we identified 3 key areas to focus on to make sure that we were improving the hunter's experience over the old map. So the first one, be able to see the imagery clearly. The current map obscured it a little bit with public land colors. The second objective, the hybrid base map, was really essential. It was one of our most popular base maps. That's a combination of contour lines on top of the imagery. So we wanted to make sure we could find that right balance of contour strength and image clarity. And then the third one, our main value proposition all along has been this lands data. So we wanted to make sure that we could get it more front and center in that visual hierarchy. So for this first objective, we developed a new way of displaying the landowner information at these higher zoom levels by introducing a watermark as a pattern over the landscape. And this allowed the imagery to remain very clear while still giving the hunter that at-a-glance understanding of land ownership. For the second objective, we developed a new contour style for hybrid with light and dark offsets so that the contours are always legible, no matter the darkness or the brightness of the background imagery. And then for this third objective with the lands data, we want to just put more emphasis and modern design into it, using things like tint bands, stronger borders to really bring that data up in the visual hierarchy, especially at the lower zoom levels. And then just like off-road, we opened up the map to select cohorts of our users, such as our ambassador program, and started prompting them to provide feedback via things like in-app messages and surveys. And this process of soliciting that feedback ended up just really proving crucial to dialing in that final 10%, helping make sure that we were solving the real customer needs or challenges, and that our maps were now helping them achieve their objectives even more effectively than they were before. And last but not least, I wanted to show the fish product. This one has been unique because, as I mentioned before, the cartography aspect is kind of growing with the product, so we haven't done a lot of extensive user testing on it yet, but it's a really beautiful map. Amelia presented on this during Practical Cartography Day, and it's been a really fun new area for us to focus design efforts, building a water-based recreation map, and just discovering kind of what's important for a map with this purpose. So to wrap it up, this work has felt just like a true success story for cartography. By giving cartography a seat at the table, the face of the product has changed immensely, improving the experience for millions of users. And the work isn't finished. We still have so much that we want to accomplish to keep delivering the spatial content of this company the most effective way possible. And we still face a little bit of an uphill climb, giving cartography the voice it deserves. It's not easy forming what's perceived as an unconventional team in the tech space, and we're continuously selling the importance of cartography and educating others, our coworkers, about the technology, the best practices, and just why it's so crucial. But the more opportunities we can find like this to give cartography a voice, the more we'll be able to keep propelling our industry forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are a little tight on time, so if you do have questions for Lee, definitely approach him after the talk, after the session.